Hi, I'm Damian, and today we're going to be looking at Nicaragua for my international management project. Nicaragua shares a northern border with Honduras and a southern border with Costa Rica. It has a tropical maritime climate, which means it's warm throughout the year. It has a distinct rainy period followed by a dry period. Vegetation varies from mangroves and swamps in the low-lying areas to dry tropical forest to rainforest and jungle in the middle areas of the country. The topography is pretty steep on the interior, and the highest point, Pico Mogoton, is about 2,906 meters, or just about 9,500 feet above sea level. Most of the country lives to the west because that area is more conducive to development. It's a volcanically active country. Interestingly, the United States Congress had initially chosen Nicaragua as a location for a canal connecting the Caribbean Sea to the Pacific. However, because of kickbacks and volcanic eruptions that took place in the region during 1902, they were scared off and they went to Panama to establish the Panama Canal. The country is a democratic republic and it's been independent since the 15th of September of 1821. Several other Central American countries became independent around that time. The president, Daniel Ortega, has been in office since January of 2007. Total population is about 6,080,000. The capital, Managua, has about 2.21 million people. The official language is Spanish, but other dialects such as Garifuna, Rama, and surprisingly, Creole English are spoken in certain areas of the country. Religious affiliation: just over half the country is identifying as Catholic, about a third as evangelical, about 1.5 as other religious affiliation, those who did not specify, 12.9%, and less than a quarter of a percent identifies as not being religious at all. Ethnic groups: Mestizo, 69%, which is a mixture of white and Native Amerindian, white 17%, 9% black, and 5% Amerindian in terms of ethnicity. The GDP was estimated to be worth about 12.69 billion in 2015. This works out to be about 2,086.90 per capita. Purchasing power parity, which is a measure of how your spending can stretch, carries it up to about $4,884, which means Nicaragua is a very cheap place in terms of purchasing goods and foodstuff and so on. The currency is the Cordoba. One Cordoba is about 3.3 cents US in value. So the $5 note I have represented there is worth about 17 cents US. The debt to GDP ratio is about 45% compared to the United States, which is somewhere around 1.1 or 110%. Average inflation is about 3%, so their inflation rate has been under control for the last several years. Its image internationally: for one, as mentioned before, the low cost of living makes it an attractive place to live, so it's growing as a retirement tourist destination. It's following close behind Honduras, for instance. Because of a relatively low crime rate, that means that you are also very much attracted to this country to move as a retired person. It's a member of numerous international organizations, such as the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the Pan American Health Organization, the World Health Organization, the International Labor Organization, among others. It has an ongoing commitment to sustainable development and poverty alleviation. In terms of communication and language, it's a very high context culture, which means you pay less attention to specific words and phrases and so on, but in terms of body language and context and situational clues. In addition to that, you'll also pay attention to the reputation of the individual. You should use your judgment in terms of how reliable the person tends to be in order to make a judgment in terms of what you think they're going to come through with. So there's a preference for suggestive language as opposed to specific, clear statements. So what are some of the concerns for business people? For one, people are concerned about abuse of power by the president. He's accused of undermining democratic institutions, and there are a few questions about whether the last elections were actually free and fair, for one. In addition to that, there's issues with bureaucracy. So there's too much paperwork in terms of setting up a business, getting approvals, setting up utilities and getting permits for building and importation and so on. All of those are concerns. So Nicaragua is a place where you're concerned about who you know and who you give kickbacks to in order to get stuff done a lot of the time. In addition to that, the workforce skill base is pretty limited because a good portion of the adult population was killed off during recent hurricanes in the last decade or so. And these are my sources.